SunFyre is alive, but what is House of the Dragon saving him for? Aegon reaches the end of the dragon in winter with nowhere left to go. Larys wants to keep running. Thailand offers another plan, though every possible road has begun closing around them. Soldiers loyal to Rhaenyra have blocked the route to Maidenpool and are moving through the woods toward Aegon's position. The king has spent most of the season concealed beneath a hood, allowing people to mistake his burned face for that of an ordinary wounded soldier. With capture approaching, he finally stops hiding. Aegon sends Larys away, accepts Tyland's decision to remain with him, and walks forward with a sword he can barely use. He tells the approaching soldiers who he is. After months of being carried, protected, ignored, and spoken to like a broken piece of the crown, Aegon chooses to die under his own name. The soldiers begin looking beyond him. SunFyre emerges from the trees. The dragon that appeared dead earlier in the season is now moving toward his rider, his body carrying the same damage that Aegon carries. One side of his face is ruined. His flight has none of the beauty associated with SunFyre before Rook's Rest. The dragon, once described through gold, light, and perfection, now looks like something that dragged itself out of the war, because Aegon needed him. Aegon does not have to wonder whether SunFyre still recognizes him. The dragon burns the soldiers before they can take another step. The scene gives Aegon something no council, army, or family member has managed to provide since Rook's Rest. SunFyre comes back for him without negotiating a reward. Larys protects Aegon because he needs a king he can influence. Tyland remains because his loyalty has survived the collapse of the Green Court. SunFyre responds because the bond between them has endured the injuries that separated them. SunFyre was never resurrected. He came close enough to death that everyone around Aegon accepted the obvious conclusion, while Aegon kept refusing it. Earlier in the season, Aegon returned to the place where SunFyre had fallen. The dragon did not move when Aegon touched him and attempted to speak to him in uncertain High Valyrian. Larys saw a corpse and treated Aegon's belief as another refusal to accept reality. Aegon took one of SunFyre's scales and left because remaining beside the body would have exposed him. Episode 7 reveals that Aegon understood his dragon better than Larys did. The scene creates a different problem for anyone familiar with Fire and Blood. SunFyre being alive agrees with the book. Almost everything surrounding the reunion has changed. SunFyre survives Rook's Rest in the book without much uncertainty. Meleys closes her jaws around his neck before Vhagar crashes down upon both dragons. Meleys dies in the fall, while SunFyre loses much of one wing and becomes incapable of flying. Aegon is taken back to King's Landing. SunFyre remains near the battlefield because moving a dragon of his size is impossible. Men are left behind to guard him, and he survives on livestock and the bodies left after the battle. Wallace Mouton later retakes Rook's Rest for Rhaenyra. Mouton and his men approach the wounded dragon intending to finish him. SunFyre rises against them and kills dozens, including Mouton. Within weeks, the dragon disappears. His wing has healed badly, though well enough to lift him into the air. The show appears to have taken that part of the book and changed its purpose. Instead of soldiers discovering SunFyre alone and trying to finish him, they discover Aegon. SunFyre's defense of himself becomes a rescue of his rider. One scene now performs several jobs. SunFyre proves he has recovered enough to fight. Rhaenyra loses another group of soldiers. Aegon survives an encounter that should have ended with his capture. The bond between rider and dragon receives the reunion the season has been preparing. The book keeps Aegon and SunFyre apart much longer. After leaving Rook's Rest, SunFyre hides around Crackclaw Point before eventually reaching Dragonstone. Nobody knows exactly why he travels there. He may be returning to the place where he was born, or he may somehow sense Aegon. A golden dragon is eventually seen around Dragonmont. Grey Ghost is later found dead and partially eaten, and the people on Dragonstone assume the cannibal killed him. Aegon hears about the Golden Scales, investigates, and discovers SunFyre. Rider and dragon are reunited while Aegon prepares to take Dragonstone from within. Baela nearly ends both of them. When Aegon flies SunFyre toward the castle, Baela escapes and mounts Moondancer. Her dragon is smaller and younger, though far faster than the damaged SunFyre. Moondancer tears at his injured wing and wounds his back. SunFyre burns her, and the two dragons eventually crash to the ground together. Once they are on the ground, SunFyre's size gives him the advantage. He kills Moondancer. The victory destroys whatever recovery he had managed. SunFyre is left with new wounds across his body and can barely function afterward. He survives long enough for one more important event. Rhaenyra returns to Dragonstone expecting safety and discovers that Aegon controls the castle. Aegon orders SunFyre to kill her. The dragon burns and devours Rhaenyra in front of her son. SunFyre dies not long afterward. That means the book gives SunFyre several major events after Rook's Rest. He survives the original fall. He kills the men who come to finish him. He finds Aegon again. He fights Moondancer. He becomes the instrument of Rhaenyra's death. His injuries finally kill him afterward. The show has already compressed some of those events together. SunFyre survives. He kills the soldiers. He reunites with Aegon. The order has changed and the reunion has happened much earlier. That is where the question comes from. If the attack on the soldiers has replaced Wallace Mouton's attempt to kill SunFyre, the writers could decide that the dragon has already completed the part of his story they wanted to preserve. He returned when Aegon needed him, killed the men surrounding his rider, and proved that the bond between them remained intact. With injuries this severe, the show would have no difficulty killing him now. SunFyre could collapse after the rescue. He could carry Aegon some distance before his body gives out. His recovery could have been temporary, with his final burst of strength coming from sensing that Aegon was in danger. That version would make his return less about preparing another dragon battle and more about completing the relationship between him and Aegon. It would also fit Aegon's story. Almost everything attached to his kingship has been stripped away, his body has been destroyed, Aemon took his throne, his family has fractured, his council scattered. Even the people protecting him usually have a political reason for doing it. SunFyre is different. The dragon comes back because Aegon is his rider. Letting SunFyre save him and then die would give Aegon one moment where something chooses him without asking what he can provide in return. Taking SunFyre away immediately afterward would make that moment even crueler. I think that possibility is very real. The soldiers may have been SunFyre's final purpose. The show has changed book events in exactly this way before. It does not always erase the important outcome. Sometimes it takes the pieces surrounding that outcome and rearranges them until they serve a different character or a different moment. Rook's Rest already works like this. In the book, Aegon and Aemond attack Rhaenys together. In the show, Aemon deliberately waits, allows Aegon and SunFyre to suffer, and then unleashes Vhagar's fire while his brother is still in the fight. The mechanics change completely. The result remains close to the same. Rhaenys dies. Meleys dies. Aegon is horribly injured. SunFyre is broken. Aemon gains power. Blood and Cheese follows the same method. The details of the plan change. The people involved behave differently. The choice presented to Helaena is different. The event still produces the death that pushes the war further into something neither side can control. The show often changes the road while protecting the destination. SunFyre's apparent death may have been another example. For several episodes, characters behaved as though the dragon was gone. Aegon refused to accept it. Because readers knew SunFyre survived Rook's Rest in the book, the show appeared to have created a major contradiction. Then SunFyre returned. The discrepancy existed only because the show delayed the answer. That is important when trying to predict what comes next. A change in House of the Dragon does not always mean the writers have abandoned the book event. Sometimes they are moving it. Sometimes two scenes become one. Sometimes an event that belonged to one character is given to another because it accomplishes the same narrative purpose more efficiently. The soldiers in the forest look like exactly that kind of change. Wallace Mouton and his men are no longer required to find SunFyre at Rook's Rest. The show has already given us a group of Rhaenyra's soldiers approaching the wounded dragon and being burned for it. The difference is that Aegon is there. Instead of SunFyre fighting because men have come to kill him, SunFyre fights because men have come to kill his rider. That is a better scene for television, because it turns a piece of dragon history into a character moment. The question is whether the same thing will happen with everything that follows. Grey Ghost is easy to remove. His death mainly creates a mystery around the golden dragon hiding on Dragonstone. The show no longer needs that mystery because Aegon already knows SunFyre is alive. Spending time introducing another dragon simply so SunFyre can kill it would repeat information we already have. Moondancer is much harder to remove. Baela has been established as an active dragon rider. The show has spent time on her relationship with Moondancer and on the dragon's speed. A fight between Baela and Aegon would also carry much more emotional weight than SunFyre killing Grey Ghost. It gives Baela something major to do. It gives Aegon another personal enemy. Most importantly, it gives SunFyre the wounds that can finally kill him. The show could therefore keep the broad structure while simplifying everything around it. SunFyre survives the forest. Aegon eventually moves toward Dragonstone. Baela discovers him. Moondancer fights SunFyre. Both dragons are destroyed by the battle, with SunFyre surviving just long enough to complete one final act. Rhaenyra then arrives. This is where completely removing SunFyre becomes much more difficult. Rhaenyra's death is one of the defining images of the dance. Her own half-brother captures her at Dragonstone and has his dragon kill her while her son watches. The show can change that. Nothing forces an adaptation to reproduce the book exactly, but removing SunFyre from Rhaenyra's death would require the writers to invent an entirely different ending for one of the two central characters. That is a much larger change than moving a battle or combining two groups of soldiers. It also removes something the story has been building between Aegon and SunFyre. They now resemble each other. Both were once symbols of the glory attached to their side. Aegon had the crown. SunFyre was considered one of the most beautiful dragons alive. Rook's Rest leaves both of them burned, crippled, and barely recognizable. Neither returns to the war restored. They return damaged. That makes SunFyre useful for the ending in a way another dragon would not be. If Aegon eventually kills Rhaenyra through SunFyre, the moment is no longer a victorious king using a magnificent dragon to destroy his rival. It becomes one ruined survivor ordering another ruined survivor to finish the war for him. SunFyre may barely be able to do it. That version would fit House of the Dragon much better than restoring the dragon to full strength. The show does not need SunFyre healthy. It only needs him alive. That is why I do not think the forest scene settles the question completely. My first instinct is still that SunFyre could die very soon, and I understand the argument that killing the soldiers may have been the entire reason the writers kept him alive. The scene works perfectly well as a final act. Aegon is about to die, SunFyre feels him, returns, burns the soldiers, and uses whatever strength remains to save his rider. There is something very clean about ending his story there. SunFyre would die having protected Aegon, rather than simply becoming another weapon in the war. But House of the Dragon has already shown us that apparent discrepancies should not be treated as final until the story has finished using them. SunFyre looked dead. He was not. The show changed when he reunited with Aegon, not whether he reunited with him. It changed who attacked him after Rook's Rest, not whether soldiers loyal to Rhaenyra would eventually be burned trying to approach him. That pattern points toward compression rather than removal. The writers seem to be taking SunFyre's remaining book story and cutting away the parts they do not need. Wallace Mooton can disappear because the soldiers in the forest replace him. Grey Ghost can disappear because the mystery surrounding SunFyre is already over. The long period where Aegon and SunFyre remain separated can disappear because their reunion works better during Aegon's lowest moment. Moondancer and Rhaenyra are different. Those events still create consequences that the show needs. A battle with Moondancer gives SunFyre a believable final wound. It gives Baela a major role in Aegon's return. It prevents SunFyre from suddenly looking healthy after the show has spent so much time showing how badly Rook's Rest damaged him. Rhaenyra's death gives SunFyre his final purpose. After that, there is nothing left that requires him. SunFyre probably will die. I do not think the show is preparing some alternate future where Aegon keeps his dragon until the end of the war. His body already looks too damaged for that, and the entire visual connection between Aegon and SunFyre depends on both of them surviving without truly recovering. The harder question is whether he dies now or after Dragonstone. If the writers wanted the forest to be his final moment, they have already given him a fitting scene without actually showing the death yet. He has returned for Aegon, destroyed the soldiers, and completed the part of the book where men come looking for a wounded SunFyre and underestimate what he can still do. That could be enough. The structure of the adaptation suggests they are keeping him for slightly longer. House of the Dragon has repeatedly changed circumstances while protecting major outcomes. The smaller the event, the more willing the show is to replace it. The closer an event gets to the ending of the dance, the more difficult it becomes to remove without changing everything around it. SunFyre killing soldiers is replaceable. SunFyre killing Grey Ghost is replaceable. Even the exact circumstances of his reunion with Aegon are replaceable. SunFyre being the dragon used against Rhaenyra is much harder to replace. That is the event I think survives. The forest scene is probably not SunFyre's ending. It is the show removing several steps between Rook's Rest and Dragonstone. Aegon no longer needs to discover that his dragon survived. He knows. SunFyre no longer needs an isolated battle to prove he can still kill. We have seen it. The next time the dragon fights, the damage should matter. Moondancer can provide it. After that, SunFyre has enough life left for one final command, then he dies. The show will probably reach the same place Fire and Blood does, only with far fewer stops along the way. SunFyre survived Rook's Rest because the story still needs him. The soldiers in the forest may have been the reason he finally got back on his feet. They probably were not the reason the writers kept him alive.